do that. And I certainly, respect all of them for all of the work and the hard labor that they have given me and the building and that kind of stuff. And so like I said, I think it's just a very natural relationship that we all have, and it's a lot of fun. But the team, Renee, really is the responsibility. She's the one who put the team together. She's the one who weeded out the good and the bad. And because we had some volunteers that had come in that didn't live up to, the expectations that we wanted. And Renee just, said, this is what we expect. And if you can't meet those expectations, then, we just don't really have time for, those kind of games. And so she's really, she's managing the property, and she's managing it very well. And so that's kind of how that all came to fruition. And, there's a lot of pride. There's a lot of pride in everybody who's doing stuff. And I think one of the things that's really neat about this is, like Daniel, for instance, a lot of us, I've been in my life, I've built decks, and I do all sorts of home remodeling and all that other stuff. I come from my father's a tool and die maker, so my background is very hands-on. But there's a lot of us volunteers that have never put drywall. And I think it's kind of neat because I think Daniel, as an example, really enjoys learning like some new things, like how to do this and how to do that. So it's not like one of those opportunities where he's just doing the same thing over and over again. He's putting up drywall, and we're learning how to mud, and we're learning how to do this, and we're kind of teaching all of that stuff. So it's a lot of fun in that aspect of, everybody. And it's kind of neat because, like, Daniel, as an example, he goes, well, how do you know how to do that? And I'm like, well, because I did my whole basement at my house. Or, like I said, my dad was one of those guys that he's kind of that old-fashioned kind of guy that he's one of those believers that why should I pay somebody to do it when I can do it myself?
There you go.
So, being his son for, as long as I lived at home, it was just kind of osmosis. So I kind of learned through my father, how to fix a toilet or how to do this or how to do that or how to do that. And because he was a tool and die maker, he was very good with his hands. And so it just kind of, I guess, generationally, I just kind of learned from him. And now I'm teaching Daniel how to do it, or teaching Sam how to do it, or somebody else how to do it. So it's kind of neat to watch it all come kind of full circle. And, and I think everybody, doesn't matter who you talk to, everybody likes to demolish something.
Oh,
and,
yes.
We got some pretty good sized tools in building that, that we're tearing down walls, and you can kind of see the look on everybody's faces when there's hammers being swung and there's drywall falling from the ceiling, and everybody's like, yeah, destroy that. So I mean, there's a little bit of that too. So that's what I think keeps everybody here is just, it's always kind of a changing, environment where we're always doing something a little new, a little old. Like we were fixing toilets the other day, and the team was like, let me see how you do that. So showing them how to fix a toilet. So, and like I said, this is kind of neat because probably in the first time in paranormal history in Old South Pittsburg, you will be able to go potty on more than just one floor because we have
that's
bathrooms
unheard
on
of.
the first floor and the second floor. And,
are you sure that's legal?
I'm positive they are working, and we all are using them. And that's really kind of neat because you don't have to run upstairs now to go to the washroom. And downstairs, the first floor, which you talked about before, which you call the basement, it's a very active part of the building now.
Yes, it is.
And
I actually got
not an area
trapped in that dining room.
Yeah.
Locked
not
in.
An area that a lot of people... Oh, you got locked in? Ooh.
I did. I was coming through, and there was fiberglass insulation that had fallen and everything. And but I came in from like the cafeteria line area, came into the dining room because the door to the hallway had been open, and I was just doing an EVP session. I was walking with my recorder going, went to go open the door, and it was closed and locked. And it was locked from my side, and I couldn't get out. So I was like, okay. So I went back, and I hadn't even noticed doors down by where the soda machines and stuff had been. But there were like double doors that were closed that I hadn't even noticed being there, and I was trapped there too. And it lasted forever. And finally I said, this really isn't funny. I hate fiberglass insulation, and I am going to be itching like mad. Would you please let me out? And whoever had done it did. So that was nice. I appreciated it. But I was ill as a hornet. And
oh no.
Okay, we have a question in chat that I have been dying to get to, but we were talking about other things, and inquiring minds want to know, is the car still there?
No, the car is not here.
Where is it?
The car. Dr. Hayes, which is the old owner of the building, took his car back. That was one of the agreements I made with him, that he could have his car back.
Oh, I don't know that I would have done that.
You know what? It was kind of sad because when I looked at the car and it was in the building, I was like, oh my God, it's in bad shape. It's going to cost more to fix it than it's worth. Well, then they kind of pulled the car out, and it was actually in a lot better shape than I thought it was. And I was like, oh, maybe I should have kept it. But you know what? At the end of the day, it wasn't my property to keep. I bought the hospital. I didn't buy his car. And like I said, it just wasn't something that, it was his. It wasn't mine. Like I said, I bought the hospital and I didn't buy the car. So, it's back in its rightful owner. And now I don't know what he did with it. I don't know if he took it to a junkyard and scrapped it, or if he sold it to somebody. It's not my business. But yeah, we just got it out of the building. And honestly, it was probably an EPA hazard being in the building anyways.
Yes.
Because it probably had oil in the motor. There's probably gasoline still in the tank. So it was really kind of in our best interest to remove it from the building.
Well, Kim says that her very first photo for her team when they went was a shadow figure behind the car, a tall, slender shadow figure.
That area is actually super active still. And
it is active.
That shadow figure that you're talking about actually now doesn't have to go over the car to get to the front side of it. So it's a little more convenient for the shadow person. But that shadow person has been seen regularly in that hallway. So
He's
I
still
believe
there.
Kim. So Kim, when you're down, take a look at that area, because that person is still there. And like I said, now they don't have to jump over a car to come say hi to you. They can walk right through.
Well, I am so glad to know that he is still there. And I had wanted to ask you, because so many people have interacted with so many of the, I call regular spirits there, that I wanted to know if you knew that they were still there, like on the third floor, the two old women that were back in that back room.
Oh, you're talking about Nellie.
Nellie and Irene.
Still here. Yeah, Nellie is still here. Well, I'm going to get this wrong, but I believe Nellie is Irene, because I believe her name is like Nellie Irene something. So
okay.
I think they're one and the same, but I could be really wrong. Honestly,
I know there's a crotchety woman in there with her.
Well, there is. Okay, so here's a cool one. So this is something we learned through one of the actual nurses that was here. And there was an older lady who, so if you're looking at the upstairs, there was the maternity ward, which is kind of like if you're coming out of the elevators, the maternity ward is on the left. And then on the right is the actual psych ward. Mm-hmm. So supposedly there was a rumor going around on that wing that the psychiatric patients were having an issue with a little old lady who in the middle of the night would crawl in bed with them.
Oh, I didn't know that.
This is something that went on for quite some time. And we just learned about this just recently. This is something that Renee and I actually found out from one of the nurses in the building, that so what happened was the nurses that were kind of on staff were kind of like, yeah, it's the psych ward. Do we believe it? Or, so they kind of just wrote it off because that was the psych ward, and they were kind of thinking that maybe it was a hallucinogen or whatever. So anyways, so what happened was one of the nurses actually went to go take a nap, and she took a nap in the nurses' quarters on the third floor where a nurse would rest. And lo and behold, the nurse was actually awoken by the old lady crawling into bed with the nurse. So that was actually a rumor that was going around that was actually supposedly true, that this spirit is still up on the third floor, and she is an older lady who I think that had dementia, and she would crawl into bed with the psych patients. And that's something that we just learned recently. I haven't obviously seen her or come across her yet, because number one, I won't sleep on the third floor.
Really?
But number two, I haven't. Oh yeah, the third floor gives me the heebie-jeebies. I love the third floor, but I do get an uncomfortable feeling up there from time to time. I definitely won't go up there alone. I know it is my own building and all that other stuff, but I definitely take another person with me. I don't feel whatever is up there is demonic or anything that wants to do harm.
No.
I just get an uneasy, uncomfortable feeling up there, and so I won't go up there alone. But now I can tell you that I did have, back in February when I was here, we were here, I believe it was a Saturday night, and we had a new team member. His name was Zach, who had come with us. And he and I were on the third floor, and it was just him and I. And we decided that we were going to do something really stupid. So we took our cell phone and we actually played a baby crying and put it in the maternity ward window.
Oh, mercy.
Figured we would use it as a trigger object to see what we could have happen. So we were up there, and I would say it was probably between 5 to 7 minutes of the baby's crying and crying. And all of a sudden, from the nurse's station on the right-hand side, we had seen a full-body apparition, and it was a nurse, walk from the nurse's station. She kind of paused in front of Zach and myself and kind of looked at us, and then walked into the maternity ward and disappeared. And this was probably one of the most significant full-body apparitions I've ever seen in my entire life. Now, Zach was a brand new paranormal investigator. I think this will be his maybe third or fourth. So he, after the nurse had walked into the maternity ward, he looked at me. And if you've been on the third floor in that area, there's just enough ambient light that you can kind of see your neighbor. And I've never seen Zach sweat, hyperventilate, and turn white. And he said, "Did you see that?" And I said, Don't tell me. But yeah, I did. Because one thing that we did as a paranormal team is when we saw something, we didn't want to kind of influence each other's visions of what we saw.
Yes.
So what we do is we go to the break room and we take a piece of paper out. We'd write down as best description as we could what we saw on our own piece of paper, and then we'd flip pieces of paper. So by the time I looked at Zach to say, "I'll meet you in the break room," he was gone. I mean, he hightailed it so quickly off the third floor and down into the second floor that, I mean, it was like the Roadrunner, running away from the coyote.
Oh, my gosh. So okay, I'm going to stop you. I'm going to stop you because we have to go to break. And I want to finish this when we come back, if you don't mind, because this is awesome. So Certainly. It's only 2 minutes. We'll be right back.
Okay.